We'll start. The room's populating nicely. So hello, welcome to everyone so far. It's great to see so many people here today for our fourth Superwomen in Tech webinar. So Superwomen in Tech is a community focused on creating awareness and opportunities for underrepresented tech talent by addressing topics and challenges within the industry. So this session in particular will all be about creating inclusive leadership strategies, and we're joined by an incredible panel of guest speakers. So our community is supported by Source Group International. We're an international recruitment specialist firm. We discover technology talent for forward-thinking organizations. So if there is anyone in the session today looking for advice on their next role or hiring challenges, please drop us a note in the chat box. But firstly, just a few pieces of housekeeping before I hand over to our guests. There'll be a Q&A session at the end of the main questions, but if you have a question before then, please drop that also in the Q&A box. This event is recorded, and the full recording will be available after the webinar as well, which we'll be posting online to share. So to hand over to our guest speakers, Manjuri, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael. And listening to the title of Superwomen in Tech, I was in a doldrum whether I should wear a cape or not.
Absolutely.
But here I am without the cape, although it's always invisible with all the challenges that we transcend on a daily basis, I think. So I'm Manjuri Sinha. I take care of everything talent. I head all things talent for OLX, which is one of the leading classifieds platforms of the Eastern European market. In my gamut, I also take care of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the organization. Have about 20 plus years of experience in the field of HR and people practices. Prior to OLX, I was working with Zalando, Call, and certain other companies like Accenture and Hewlett-Packard, etc. Originally from India, born and brought up in New Delhi, worked in different organizations, and now call Berlin home for the past 9 years. So there's a lot of diverse experiences that I bring as well to where I am right now. And actually, all of them add value to who I am today than any kind of a disadvantage. So that's my superpower and the cape that I wear.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. Also, we're joined by Elisabeth. Elisabeth, if you could introduce yourself also.
Yes, hello to the audience, and thanks for having me here. My name is Elisabeth. I lead the data science and machine learning teams in SumUp, risk and compliance. So these are four teams of machine learners and analysts, and we are focusing on building solutions for making SumUp safe in terms of protecting SumUp from fraud, ensuring compliance with machine learning and modern analytical solutions. For my education, I'm a physicist. I'm in the data science space for a bit more than 10 years now. I've also, like Manjuri before, I've worked at Zalando and several other companies. And I'm really glad to be here and discuss this incredible interesting topic of diversity and inclusion.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. And just briefly with myself, for those that don't know me, Michael Belzko, I work as one of the associate directors at Source Group International. I've been working in leadership and management for the last 8 years now, across multiple organizations, primarily within the DACH and Scandinavian regions. I have over 15 years overall within recruiting fields. So very happy to be hosting this with great panelists. So thank you. So that leads us nicely on to our first topic. So our first topic, we're going to be looking into inclusive leadership. And the first question, which I'd love to pose to you, Manjuri, is why is diversity and inclusion important in tech companies today? And what would you say are the defining factors of diverse and inclusive leadership?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael. And it's interesting that after so many years of work in this field, we still have to have this particular question on why is it important. But it's also a good way of bringing people back to the context and to the stage. Talking about a few numbers, and let's probably step back and take a look at a few numbers in the industry or from the industry, and different surveys, different researches. It's interesting to see that only 1 in 4 C-suite leaders is a woman, and only 1 in 20 is a woman of color. Only 15% of engineering jobs are held by women overall, making it the STEM field where women are most highly underrepresented. It's also interesting to see on the other side, which is the flip side of this, that behaviors also differ when we talk about diverse communities and population. One of the examples there is, as per a LinkedIn research and data, women are 16% less likely to apply to a job after they go through the entire job description. And women are also 26% less likely to ask for a referral, which is one of the major sources of talent when we talk about, or good pools of talent when we look at engineering talent, and that's employee referrals. So looking at all this, data in context, why is it important for organizations? For tech companies, there are a couple of reasons why it's important. Of course, the entire topic of financial performance, and there have been different examples in the market, from McKinsey to Gartner to Accentures of the world, and I'm really lucky to have that grounding in Accenture as my former employer there, of financial performance. So as diverse as the population you have, as inclusive as an organization you have, that really shows up in your performance and financial performance as well. Where does this impact? It impacts, number one, is in innovation and creativity. You're bringing in different ways of thinking. You're bringing in different kinds of backgrounds. So you are also looking at another topic like problem solving. So you bring different ideas to the table when you're approaching a particular problem. I think all of us remember that one picture that had come into play a couple of months ago. This was, I think, some conference of leaders in the world, and you had this whole table, a white table with a lot of men sitting around, almost wearing the same tie. With all due respect, that particular picture was like, okay, no one made a meme. It was a picture. Of course, a lot of memes were made after that, but it was a picture. So, and no one even thought about that, seeing the room, that, oh my God, there's something wrong going on there. So you can imagine, if you throw a problem in that room, how many different solutions you'll find to that particular problem, right? So that's problem solving. The third is pretty interesting, and this is something I always remember when I remember about my Zalando days also from that time, is the customers that we cater to. That is a very diverse population. We cater to people coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, different sexual identities, etc. So how can we not have an employee base that is representative of the customer base or the markets that we operate in? Fourth, this is again something we know in tech. There's always a competition for talent, and we are always looking at attracting talent and looking at magnetic leaders. And this is also something that we hear from the millennials today. That's one of the things that they want to check when they are looking at the interviewer panel: who's working in the organization, what kind of a team construct is there. Diversity and inclusion is very, very important, and diverse teams are important to also peg on this talent and attraction. And finally, looking at the brand reputation itself. And we've seen some real challenges in the past when we've had certain advertisements, marketing campaigns, which really failed, probably because there was no one in the room to call them out and say that, hey, are you sure you want to do this? I don't think this is settled in with this part of the population, etc. So when you see that, you know that, okay, you needed that one voice, an additional voice in the room to help your brand reputation as well. A couple of things that tech companies can do to work more towards this achievement of their goal on becoming more diverse, especially around engineering or management or leadership in tech, is first and foremost, I think, is starting from the top. Unless you have commitment, unless you have measurable topics for the leadership, and when I talk about the leadership, I'm really starting from the CEO, the CFO, the C-suite, and then down. If you don't have commitment, then it's just for show. It's just pinkwashing and nothing else. The second bit is when we talk about commitment from the top, it also talks about the financial aspect. The many a times we see that, yes, the organization is talking a lot about DEI, but you don't even have a budget carved out for it. So when you talk about that commitment should also be in financial terms. You should have a proper bucket and kitty for the DEI activities to happen. The second one would be inclusive decision making. So whatever is the way that the leadership has, put as a governance, whether you talk about a RACI model or a SIPOC model or any such model, there should be a way of ensuring that different voices in the organization do have a say in final decision making or sensitive topics on how to parse communications. We've seen some horrendous hows happening in the last couple of months. Beginning of this year, we saw big companies such as Meta, Google, Salesforce, etc., who went through layoff processes. A lot of tech companies have done the same thing. Yeah. However, we saw some of these tech companies carry out the process in the worst possible manner, and some of them carrying out the process in a humane manner. We would love to see what was the difference in the room, who was there in the room when you talked about the communication, when you talked about the steps, etc., on whether a particular employee who was on a maternity leave just got the shock of a layoff news, or was this person actually called up and informed, given the context, and said that, hey, relax, once you come back, we'll discuss, this is the process, this is how we handhold you, etc. So that's also something that shows on inclusive decision-making and communication, if the leadership stands with that or not. And very important in today's global world, most tech companies are global. We just saw Booking.com open their India hub in Bangalore. I've heard that Volvo has opened a new tech hub in Krakow. So the world is global for tech companies. One of the traits of inclusive leaders is cultural competence. And I really love to refer to my favorite author's book here, Erin Meyer, Culture Map. Leaders who can work across cultures, who can make themselves learn about different cultures, and can take an inclusive stance within their teams as well, because some are more extrovert, some are more introvert, etc. Some are sticklers for time. Me, I'm an Indian living in Germany. I know what kind of a hassle it is for the time aspect. So how do you be inclusive on that? So I think these are a couple of traits for sure. I could go on and on, but just for sake of time, these are the 4 traits I would definitely talk about when you come to inclusive leaders.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I guess that kind of leads quite nicely onto the next question, because we hope that with these webinars that it's kind of going to foster new ways of thinking, especially for new leaders, new managers coming in that are very aware about what they may need to do within their organization. So how do you feel leaders can foster a culture of inclusivity within their teams or organizations at a kind of starting point?
Yeah, is that for me, or are you asking Elisabeth?
Just across to the panel, I guess, with that one. So yeah, how do you feel leaders can foster that kind of culture of inclusivity within their teams or organizations?
I think if we start at first level leadership, I think very important is setting the tone, using inclusive language, making sure everybody in the room feels addressed, amplifying voices, make sure everybody is heard, encouraging shyer people to speak. Making sure you value everyone's opinion. That's one very important aspect. I think another important aspect is what Manjuri just did. So actually first buying into that concept of diversity and inclusion and sharing why you think it is important. And I mean, Manjuri gave all these very important facts in a way I could never summarize, but I would like to add one point here. It's just the right thing to do. Like from an ethical perspective, giving the same or trying to give similar chances to everyone in this world is just a thing. I think it doesn't need any further justification. It's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, agreed. Do you have any further thoughts on that, Manjuri?
No, I think Elisabeth summarized it very, very well. And it is definitely the right thing to do. Punkt. No discussion beyond that.
Yeah. Well, I guess when that kind of moral aspect comes in, I think what you see in successful leaders, successful managers that do play a part within that. Obviously, empathy is such a huge and important part to have. So I guess this would be a good question for you, Elisabeth. What role does empathy play in leadership, particularly in the context of diversity and inclusion?
So I think if you try to foster an inclusive culture, the first step to do that is to be able to understand the different needs of very different perspectives who are in the room. And yeah, empathy is kind of the key, enabling you to start understanding what are the different needs, what can everybody bring to the table, and also where do I need to pay attention here. And that's yeah, so that is, I think, what is the key of empathy.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I guess that one of the points that you mentioned previous to that as well, Elisabeth, is giving everyone that kind of voice in the room. So how do you feel that you've been an ally to underrepresented groups? And is there anything that you would suggest for other leaders or managers for how to be an ally for those groups?
Yeah, so again, the key is empathy and understanding. And the first step is here again, active listening. So don't assume you understand. So I'm a woman in tech, so sometimes I can probably resonate with some of the struggle other female people have experienced in tech, but there are a lot of other underrepresented groups, which may be much harder for me to understand. I mean, a neurodiverse Hispanic person, I'm not sure I can understand what they're struggling with. So the key is, or first key is really actively listening and having regular one-on-ones with your teammates, and try to understand really give them a space to talk what's important to them, and foster this culture of active listening and asking active questions. That's, I think, the first step of being an ally. Then following up, it's of course, yeah, just position yourself. It can be something minor, just have a pride flag background when it's Pride Month in June, or just mention casually, or make sure you give the space to everyone. Be observant. So if in case you feel you observe discrimination, you observe racism, speak up, raise your point, and advocate. Also use your privilege to advocate same rights for everyone, and advocate diversity and inclusion.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd add to that, Manjuri?
Yeah, Michael, I mean, Elisabeth put great points there. I do have one point to add here, and we talk about allyship, and that's really needed. Yes, of course, that's definitely needed. But there's also a point where you actually transcend, and what you need is sponsorship. That becomes super important, because you've seen there's something that we call as, we've called it as a glass ceiling. You've seen the percentages that the moment you go from a woman in management to, say, women leadership and exec, there's a drop, and you have to really struggle to be in that space. It's so funny that even in a field like HR, where you have usually more women, even there is a tussle the moment you step into the exec layer. And that's where the sponsorship actually comes into play. So if you have any kind of privilege and you're in that room or amongst the C-suite, or where you have that opportunity of giving that exposure, giving that sponsorship for a particular person who's probably not that privileged and is doing a great job there, I think that's the opportunity for a leader to consciously take and always keep in mind. Simple things. Somebody would, in a forum, maybe a talent review is going on. And in that particular forum, somebody would cite for a particular person that, hey, I've kind of observed that this person is not very structured. And if you're in the room, you can always bring in, and again, referring to culture map here, you can bring in that context of the fact that what you probably perceive as structured and what this person perceives as structured is probably slightly different. Let's look at what the outcomes that this person has led to. And that's where you can be a sponsor in the room. That's sometimes people don't think about, or subconsciously even don't even lean on the sponsorship part of it. But that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually, and it leads quite nicely onto the final kind of question into the inclusive leadership portion. But It's how to build trust and rapport with diverse teams. This is something I'd like to open up to both of you, I guess, in that respect. But how would you both build trust and rapport with diverse teams, again, at that kind of early phase?
I think in one of my first leadership workshops, we have been discussing this question, and a comment which really resonated and stayed with me was someone said, trust to be trusted. So give this upfront trust and really trust them to trust you. And that is, I mean, I think it translates to really build a relationship and put some fundamental trust in people, and you'll get trust back. I think it's the second aspect is be vulnerable yourself. So share, actively share, and be approachable. And the third one is, again, actively listen and genuinely care.
Yeah. And how about yourself, Manjuri?
Yeah, my go-to would have been the vulnerability from Brené Brown. You know, you talk about how do you build those in a pyramid structure, and you start from where, and purpose, etc., and build that trust. It's also some of the moments, right? And I think Elisabeth mentioned this, that you need to have those one-on-ones. You need to know and this is super important when it comes to a manager-employee relationship. You need to know the person that you're working with. Of course, don't be creepy. If the person doesn't want to share, don't creep beyond that. But of course, you can, taking an interest beyond the day job on with, say, what's up, maybe something is bothering the person, maybe a family member is not well, something is going on in the extended family, etc. If you have somebody who's living away from their country, and something is going on in their country, how do you extend that support, etc. So those are things where you go beyond that job and see the person as a whole, more, be curious. What do how do you celebrate this particular festival, etc. So all these things then kind of cluster up, and this person will slowly also start trusting you. And in that process, it'll be more, they'll know that you're interested in much more than just that deliverable or just that job for them. So that definitely helps building trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to kind of wrap up the inclusive leadership part of it, I think that for whoever's listening to this currently, and whoever's going to be going back to this and listen to it on the other forums, that there's some really interesting points in there. So if as a business or as a leadership person, or first stepping into management, if you don't have a diversity and inclusion strategy, that's where you can really start. And I think that you both have brought up some really excellent points of how to really start that from the real base layer as well. So it leads really nicely into our next topic. So diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So Elisabeth, to put this one to yourself initially, how would you build a more diverse and inclusive workforce from a leadership perspective?
I think Manjuri in her first answer touched also already on some points here. So starting with hiring, and make sure your hiring is inclusive. So when you're formulating like job descriptions, make sure to use inclusive language. Maybe if you can offer flexible working hours, that offers possibility for caregivers probably. Make sure in your hiring panel you educate people about unconscious biasness they may have, right? Manjuri already gave an example about this being structured, and how do you perceive what do you bring, and what is your own glasses you wear when you judge people, and try to make the hiring panel inclusive, and make sure you discuss these different perspectives there. So that's, I think, again, on the first level leadership, what you can do. And then from an organizational part, it's obviously promoting that diversity and inclusion is a topic for you. Be accountable, what Manjuri said, have some budget there, have some clear goals. And I'm not sure whether Manjuri wants to add some points, so that's what comes to my mind here.
No, I think they're great points, Elisabeth. So yeah, you summarized it well.
Absolutely. No, it sounds good. And it's really worth noting that even for Source Group International, that we've actually taken part in providing diversity and inclusion training, really trying to eliminate bias in the hiring process from our side as well when we're trying to support our clients and other organizations. So there's always kind of those base layer points that every business can really start delving into. And I guess, Manjuri, for you, when it comes to the unconscious bias, how do unconscious biases impact leadership decisions, and what steps can leaders take to mitigate their influence?
Yeah, I think, like any other people topic, right? So we're talking about the realm of work, but I guess unconscious bias impacts us on a daily basis on usual, even, the simple, probably, when we see somebody walking on the street and how we react, etc. Also is sometimes unconscious bias and stereotyping and things that we've grown up with and beliefs that we've grown up with, etc. And it impacts people processes, it impacts decisions, like Elisabeth mentioned. To begin with, I think one of the areas where we see the starting is hiring, then in the other moment that matters is promotions. There's also stats that says that you have more, of course, as at the moment you start climbing the ladder, you'll see the number of men to women, there's a gap. There's also a gap when it comes to rewards, so compensation. There's, you can talk about different areas where you talk about talent reviews or performance evaluations, etc. When you're looking and comparing the work across different people, unconscious bias creeps in, and different kinds of unconscious bias actually creeps in. There something that have also, and there's researchers that have talked about it, but there's also evidence in anecdotal conversations, etc., where especially women in tech say that when we were doing a bit of a research and the first start actually happened, we heard that when you have these projects being assigned, especially in technology, maybe Elisabeth can throw light on this, and you're in the room, you tend to get probably the easier responsibility ones and not the more complex ones. And this is something that I've heard from my peers who are women in tech. And this is something that they had to always fight for. Okay, no, give me bigger scope, give me bigger responsibility. So assigning responsibilities is also something that becomes a challenge. Communication is another way of where you can see the unconscious bias actually creeping in and reflecting. I take an example of my former employer, our former employer, Zalando. So I was in the midst of the hypergrowth period for Zalando. And it was interesting because, yes, we had those years when we were chasing 1,000 engineers to hire, and those were the kind of targets. And yes, we did it in an amazing speed, and we are super proud of that. But there was a time, somewhere around 2017 and 18, when we realized that, yes, we've kind of ended up with a lot of men, and the balance is not really fitting in when we talk about the gender diversity there. But that was a good call. We started working on at that point of time. We had this person she was a project manager. Then she actually became the head of DE&I for Zalando at that later at that stage. Talking about Sara Cordovano, great lady. If you just Google her name, and she has an excellent book also that she's put down for practical tips on DE&I. And that's when we started this whole activity around how do we pick up the topic of DEI and start with the ERGs in place. How do you deal with these unconscious biases? What you asked, Michael, as a second one, and a lot of things. I think I'll refer to putting structure in place on certain things. For example, when you talk about, I think Elisabeth touched upon this as well. So when we are talking about hiring, of course, starting with what good looks like in an objective manner. So that's one of the key areas. We are looking at attracting. Again, Elisabeth mentioned about job descriptions. I'll talk about reach outs and even your employer branding page, etc. You can always use tools like Text.io, tools like Data People. There are a lot of these augmented writing tools that can help you with inclusive language coming through. So that's super concrete in that fashion. When you talk about the second phase, which is more about assessing people who are coming through the process or candidates who are coming through the process, put a competency-based or a skill-based hiring process in view. So it's completely objective. There are tools today in the market based on Gen AI like Screen Loop and MetaView, which can help you here as well. Something that interviewers don't like to do or leaders don't like to do is taking notes during interviews and then parsing it and really giving that whole scorecard.
Yeah.
But thanks to Gen AI, there are tools to do that now. And it's so interesting because it can give you a summary. And the best part is when you're discussing the candidate's results, and earlier you could hear sometimes hiring managers say, yeah, I don't have the feel for this. Like, I don't want the feel. Go back to you can ask the bot, it'll tell you what was right, what was wrong as per the requirements. What did the candidate say? What did the interviewer say? And give you an objective assessment. So use technology to your help and structure the interview with competencies, skills, whatever you're using. Another way of putting structure around this. There's something called as a DEI audit. This is either you can take it in help of a consultant, an experienced consultant that comes in and looks at different employee processes in your organization and looks at where there are gaps in play and how those gaps can be measured up as well. There are things that companies have resorted to, like blind recruiting, where you can cover the image or cover the picture or cover one part of the name, etc. Looking at things. Of course, diverse pipelines when it comes to ensure that, again, when I talked about the commitment from the top, one of the things that we do in our organization is looking at the representation, especially for gender, looking at the representation, making each leader accountable for increasing the representation in the organization for women. So when you're hiring for maybe -1 of the C-suite, and if you're looking for that area, then focus on the fact that we are going to reach out so that you have a more diverse pool of candidates. So I think these are different ways of looking at reducing these unconscious bias, ensuring that not just one person makes the decision, you have a group making the decision on objective basis, etc. There are lots of tools also in place that help you out today, but I just took some examples, some names that could come into play in the hiring space for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had no idea that that kind of AI space was going to be so supportive in that sense. I suppose that's going to make hirers and leaders, managers just have real tangible information rather than just that, again, that unconscious bias to kind of fool you into making wrong decisions that can actually really harm the business or the team. You mentioned an author there, and there was an author earlier. I think for the listeners as well, I think it'd be really great if we can take those names down at the end of this and put them onto the chats as well, because there's a couple of really interesting points that you've taken off the back of those two. Well, that leads us nicely into the kind of strategy side. So this is one that I'd like to open up to the panel, but what strategies can leaders implement to ensure diversity and inclusion efforts are integrated into all aspects of their organization? So we've touched on it on the AI space, but any other types of operations or decision-making processes that maybe both of you have experienced so far?
Yeah, I can add one practice from SumUp, which I found really helpful. And this is so really embed diversity and inclusion in your company's values and make your company's values also visible. And one thing we do in the hiring process, at the end, we have a so-called bar raiser interview, where we are not interviewing for hard skills, but we are interviewing for values. And diversity and inclusion is one part of this. And we have strategies to assess like what the candidates think and yeah, is it a topic for them? And so making this bar raiser interview, in that interview, you solely focus on values, attitude, work values, and not on skills. And I found this really helpful when you have then the decision panels to bring this unique perspective.
Yeah, excellent. So anything from your side, Manjuri? Any other strategies that could be implemented?
Yeah, I think, Mike, adding to that, I would say starting with the strategy of awareness itself. So when we talk about the DEI initiative, when people or startup founders are talking and they ask this question, when should we start? And my response to them is usually, if you should start now, because of all our learnings. When we've reached those many thousands, then we realize, oops, then we have to start from the drawing board. So it's always good to start when you have the 10th employee already in your organization. And the first step is awareness. We had today, this is the disability week that we are going through in our organization. And we actually had an excellent session with Claire Harvey, who's one of the Paralympians who also shares her experiences. And it was very interesting to understand the different kinds of disabilities that are there. And she was sharing very practical tips for managers, leaders, on how you can make your teams inclusive for disabled people and disabled employees. And there were so many interesting things. And this is the first stage, so awareness. As much and as this could be a part of your campaigns, that could be the first strategy itself, and creating that awareness across the organization on different types of diversity. The second would be around talking about, okay, then how do you execute this, or making it instrumental. And one of the things, Michael, I saw you like that post, so I'm going to refer to the middle managers here.
Yeah.
Like we heard earlier from Elisabeth, that one-on-one, that connection with the middle manager. It's not that the CEO can come and talk to every employee. We're talking about any organizations which are 3,000, 30,000, but also 300,000. So if each manager is enabled with this, it's going to really go to the grassroots level. And that's where we work with an agency called EDIT, who supports us on certain activities, and they've helped us introduce a tool called Meetings in the Box. Basically, this is a tool designed to enable managers to have a conversation around diversity and inclusion within their small teams, which and they can create a safer space, a smaller space, but talk about real serious and sensitive topics without having certain fears. And this is a tooling which is enabled. They've designed this and they enable this. And there are different ways of doing this, but that's another way of really drilling this down into the managerial level. And the third is what I was talking about earlier, in each people process, ensuring that you have either an audit, you have a step. If you have ERGs or BRGs in the organization, then you have ERGs and BRGs also having a say or having some kind of a view of the bigger data points. What could be a bigger data point? When you are done with your appraisal process, looking at the percentages of women who are promoted, looking at the percentage of men who are promoted, you can always pass this by your women's ERG or BRG in the organization and see whether it's improving over time, whether the balance is being reached or not, and what more could be done. So that's another way of driving a strategy through ERGs and BRGs as well. Okay,
that's really interesting. So the next question I was going to ask was how can leaders navigate difficult conversations about diversity and inclusion within their teams or organizations? I feel like we've answered a couple of points off that, but I guess almost like a what if scenario. If companies aren't as mature as the ones like the ones you work for, like OLX or SumUp, if a business is finding or doesn't have that awareness, how can someone navigate those kind of difficult conversations within their teams or organizations? Is this something that either of you have had experience of before, where you've had to kind of take that step forward to challenge something?
Yeah, Elisabeth, you want to go first?
So I think one of the keywords is what Manjuri already mentioned. So creating a safe space for conversations, and you can do that. Being an individual leader, you can make an effort to create a safe space, even if the organization is not mature. So this is something everybody leading already a small team can do. I think a second aspect here is again, then this actively listening, and also having fight to have someone in the company who's neutral, people can talk to. So we do have a head of diversity and inclusion in SumUp, and I always tell my teams, in case you're not comfortable to talk to me about something, there is the head of diversity and inclusion, and she will listen to you and make sure you're not the only point of reference, I guess. It can be that people are not comfortable to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to add to that, Mike, and excellent points there, Elisabeth. One is storytelling. This never fails because we are all human beings. The moment someone's story touches our heart, the realization comes and you want to learn more about it. And this is where you can either bring in folks externally to speak about the topic, or your own employees. We did a round, and previously we did have this OLX Autos business, which we've sold off this year. And OLX Autos was based out of countries like Brazil, like India, a little bit tricky on certain aspects. We had employees from our offices in South America, some of the countries where it's not superbly easy to come out and say that you're gay. And in those countries, we did have some certain employees who were comfortable doing this on a webinar. So when we ran this whole session for the Pride months, they shared their experiences, and some of those experiences were really, really heart-wrenching on, the challenges that they face, the penalties that they face, etc., etc. So when you hear that, you automatically see some of these, who would be prospective hiring managers, people managers, etc., curious about what we can do to make our teams more inclusive. Storytelling has great power in it there. I think that's one of the key things that we underestimate, but yes, we should focus on that. So that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess what that kind of really boils down to is effective communication, right? I think so, and it bleeds really nicely into our last topic within this, but it is all about inclusive communication. And I guess this would be a perfect one for you, actually, Manjuri, is how can leaders effectively communicate the importance of DE&I initiatives to their teams and stakeholders?
Make it sit within your company goals. That is the most important thing to do when the CEO opens up the goal sheet or the OKRs, whatever you call it in your organization. This or anything, when you're talking about representation or inclusion, or you're talking about belongingness, which depends which stage your organization is in, that should be there on top with the financial goals or with the business goals. That's the first and foremost way of articulating that this is important for the C-suite to begin with. Second is, as I mentioned, you have a budget for the topic, and it shouldn't be something that people just do on the side. Should be something that you have a team for, you have a staff budget for, non-staff budget for. If you should have a governance process for encouraging employee resource groups, and again, budget for them, so that they can drive these activities as well. So this is definitely one of the ways. Then you drill it down. For example, in our organization, for the DEI goal, everybody who's a skip level manager and above actually carries a DEI goal. So you drill it down. It could be in terms of looking at when you come to the managerial level. It could also be in terms of looking at your engagement score results and having certain questions which talk about connectedness, belongingness, and certain aspects on diversity can be covered, and then you can map those scores across managerial excellence in the year. So if you communicate these through these goals and priorities and purpose for the organization, and that's the best way of ensuring that you put the importance on these particular aspects within the organization.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Excellent. So some really good points on that one, actually. And I think that once you kind of have those initiatives in place, Elisabeth, one for you, but how can leaders then hold themselves and others accountable for DE&I goals and outcomes?
I guess my answer here is a typical data person answer. So I think first you need to make stuff measurable. To be accountable, you need to formulate your goals precisely and to make them measurable. And how can you measure something? So example is like measure gender pay gap in different levels. Another KPI we already talked about is like, what is the share of women or underrepresented minorities as each career step? What is the share of promotions? And so you need to measure that, and you can measure kind of easily if it's gender and you forget for a minute about transgender subtleties. You can probably rather easily measure other underrepresented minorities. You have to ask them about how do people self-identify. So you need surveys, and you need to measure for minorities on the different, what is the career step, how do they feel belonging, all these kind of things. Then the next step, you measure your goals, you clearly formulate, I want to increase the share of women in executive functions by 5 percentage points over the next 2 years. And so you formulate it, then you need to state it very transparently, and then like this you start creating accountability. And this nicely fits also into what Manjuri said, right? So you need to trickle down these goals, and every leader needs to have some sub goals which feed into this higher goal. So it's very similar for like other business goals, accountability, how you create it, right? Transparency, measurability, and buy-in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess that you mentioned about that kind of KPI side, and the next point I was going to ask actually was how do we then measure the impact of DE&I initiatives? So there's obviously the KPI side. Is there anything that we can look at when it comes to gender pay gap or EMPS surveys? Is that anything that you may have had experience in, or anything that you can shed some experience on?
Well, so at SumUp, we do have regular ENPS surveys where we measure also like the degree of belonging, but we have also specific diversity and inclusion surveys where we ask about self-identification with respect to gender, with respect to sexual identity, with respect to race, and of course, anonymous and not mandatory. But then you can gauge in more depth, really. Okay. And ask questions. You ask yourself questions. Do people who have certain disabilities, do they feel belonging? Do they struggle with certain things? And so I think, then you need to tie an initiative. So you identify a problem, you want to improve on a certain KPI, you define your initiative with that, and you measure before and after the outcome. So I think it's tied to KPIs, but the next step is also identify an initiative which really, where you think would improve that specific KPI. Yeah,
that's really interesting. Manjuri, is there anything from your side when it comes to maybe with OLX and some of your initiatives at the moment?
Yeah, pretty similar, Michael, to what Elisabeth said. In addition, we do have certain questions that we measure during our candidate experience surveys. There's a particular question that says that, on the panel and the diversity of the panel, did they actually see that or not? And then we look at one KPI on new hire attrition, because yes, we've brought in diverse talent, but then what happened during onboarding, during the setting them up for success or not. So we look at how many men versus women left. And unfortunately, the challenge around this is also the lack of non-binary data here. And that's what Elisabeth was talking about, the way a lot of tools and systems are put in place. So you can only look at the binary men and women and not the others, unless you take that self-ID into every step of the way. So that's a bit of a challenge. But these are the main KPIs to look at. And of course, then you have the exit interviews where you can also, again, look at the men-women balance, etc. around that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, to finalize the inclusive communication piece, I think this would be a really good question to put out to the panel, particularly for those managers or leaders that are trying to implement these strategies into their businesses. But what are some effective strategies for providing ongoing DE&I training and education for leaders and team members alike?
Maybe I can share like one experience which really resonated with me. So we do have diversity and inclusion sessions and education for leaders. And one of the first I joined, we were filling like a self-assessment, which was trying to assess your own privileges. And I found this really eye-opening because I had, of course, looked at the topic of women in tech and gender pay gap. That has been a topic for me. But then I realized I'm privileged in so many ways. And sorry, I mean, I'm white. I have higher education. I grew up in a Western European middle class family. I'm not mentally or bodily disabled, just to name a few here. So that is and realizing these privileges, actually, that made me really buy into this topic. And I think that is helpful. Also confronting people with their own privileges, and this will create buy-in, I guess.
Yeah, excellent. And yourself, Manjuri, anything to add onto that one?
One training resonated with me. I remember this was with a company called Firefly from the US. Our parent company used to partner with them, and they ran this session for leaders in the organization and their group companies. This was called prototyping inclusion. Similar to what Elisabeth said, it really makes you aware of your own privileges. And then it talks about in groups and out groups of this whole study that happened at the age of kindergarten, on how in groups and out groups form amongst kids already. And this continues throughout our life. And at the end, now it becomes all about exclusion and inclusion, actually. So definitely that resonated, and that had an impact on some of our leaders. I still remember one of our BIT leader who came and said, after that session, he literally pinged me and said, from now on, I'm going to ensure that we have a panel, when I'm hiring for certain roles in my leadership, I want to ensure that I see a good balance of men and women in that, because of course, BIT is an area where you have more men than women in any sector there. And that was good. He volunteered, he took it to his own team, and this really had an impact. So this one I definitely remember. We do in our organization take an opportunity. So we have this whole calendar, like I'm sure even SumUp and other companies do, around different topics of whether it's a Pride Month or Women's Day, like we are now continuing with the Disability Week, etc., where we run these campaigns and bring an opportunity to tell certain stories across as well. So this is another way of looking at, and this could be coupled with, as I said, those meetings in the box training. We run inclusive leadership as a learning path as well. Then we have a particular learning path with social talent, which is all about inclusive hiring, inclusive interviewing, etc. So those are those different moments that we do. When we are looking at training during we call that P2P, so that's our appraisal process. For the managers, we definitely have 2 or 3 slides talking about, and really imbibing as well, talking about the fact that you need to look at, the assessment from different perspectives, etc., making them aware of unconscious bias and all as well. So these are certain areas where we plug in those training sessions, enabling sessions.
Excellent. I think again there'll be some really valid references that we'll be able to include into the promotion of this as well, which I'd love to take from you afterwards, because there's again some real things that our listeners and participants would love to take a hold of. But that wraps up our inclusive communication piece, and almost wraps up the webinar, so to speak, off the back of that as well. We do have a really interesting question that from one of our participants that I'd love to share. It's someone asking if they can provide more concrete examples from your experience on proven tools or techniques you use to build trust with teams. So they've specifically mentioned, besides the one-on-ones and besides the active listening, is there any other proven tools or techniques that either of you could share for our participants?
I'm not sure whether Manjuri has something in her toolbox still. So my answer would be, trust is something that is happening between 2 persons, and tools will only get you so far. So speaking pathetically, to generate trust, you have to pour at least a little bit of your heart into that relationship to really genuinely care about the person you're talking to, and building a real relationship that includes making yourself vulnerable as well, open up yourself. And tools only get you so far. So the tools can help creating the atmosphere for that, but you need to give a piece of your heart. I think that's my answer.
And that is, Elisabeth, actually that one-on-one is a tool. It is a lot of us as managers really underplay the importance of that one-on-one that builds a relationship and continues the relationship. It's an amazing tool. That one-on-one can also be broken up into what should the first part be, second part be, third part be. If you go to ChatGPT, I'm sure they can, ChatGPT can break that down for you. That is also something that is a tool. There are other things that talent professionals use. One is called a leadership audit. There's a method to it. You basically different executioners use different tools, but you go through a couple of questions, and then the team responds to the questions vis-a-vis the leader responds to the questions. Then you take the leader out of the room. You have a conversation with the facilitator and the team members, and the leader then comes back and actually listens to this feedback. And in the process, of course, is super candid and gets aware, very vulnerable, and that's another way of creating a kind of a safe space. Does it create trust or not? It's a journey. Trust doesn't happen overnight. It does create that safe space to have that conversation, though. So that's one process of or a tool, if you may call it. The second one some leaders use, and I've seen one of my leaders do it, is when you are a new leader taking on a team or joining an organization, some leaders use something called as read me. And that's defining on your style of leadership. Are you hands-off, hands-on? What kind of communication do you prefer? Slack, email, etc. So it's a lot of that read me and what are your values as such. Again, does that create trust immediately? No, it doesn't. It just gives a peek into you. Like Elisabeth said, the trust requires a relation. Trust is like at workplace is like a trust in a partnership with your friend, with your spouse, with your family members. You have to work on it. It doesn't come, unfortunately, with any tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some really invaluable points there that I'm sure a lot of listeners are going to be taking on board. Well, look, that actually wraps up our fourth SuperWomen in Tech webinar today. I'd like to say a big special thank you to Manjuri, big thank you to Elisabeth for taking time out of your day. Some real fantastic insights there that people will be taking away. So thank you so much. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today as well. Please follow all of our guest speakers. Their LinkedIn's will be in the chat. And also be sure to join the SuperWomen in Tech and SourceTalks community pages for all of the latest events and news. This one is recorded, we're happy to say, and it will be out there on all the major platforms very soon. So look, a big thank you again. I hope you found this as valuable as I have personally as well. Thank you, and all have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye now.